I could get my 10th green arrow in a row this game week, and with many differentials in the squad, I'm pushing to that top 100k rank. In today's team selection video, we're going to have a look at how I could line up for game week 36 and some potential transfers I could make to highly owned players to push my rank up even further. So let's waste no time and jump straight into today's team selection video. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm on course for my 10th green arrow in a row this game week, which is great. We're up to 178k in the world, so 100k is within touch and distance. I just have to make sure I choose the right captains and bring in the right players with my remaining transfers for the end of the season. If you are new to the FPL Mugs channel, go ahead and click the subscribe button. But speaking about potential mistakes I make with transfers, we'll start with the defender in O'Brien. Last game week, I chose to bring him in over Lewis Dunk. Lewis Dunk really did nothing for my team since game week 30 wildcard, so I believe a transfer out for him made sense to go to an Everton defender in O'Brien, who had an Ipswich fixture. Of course, Ipswich then go ahead and ruin the day, and O'Brien gets a yellow card, meaning he resulted in 0 points for the game week. But looking at the bench, my other defenders didn't do particularly well. Trippier only coming away with 2 points, so it's missing out on 2 points there with Trippier on the bench, and of course O'Brien was 0. But he does have an okay fixture this week with Fulham away from home, but it's really the next fixture in game week 37 with Southampton at home that I'm looking forward to with O'Brien, so we'll see what happens with that. But the rest of the defenders, we've got Dean Henderson back in goal. Tottenham away, I don't think it's a bad fixture. Of course, if they make the Europa League final, Tottenham, we expect mass rotation. And of course, Tottenham just aren't a good side in the Premier League at the moment. Their main focus is on Europa League. And of course, Palace might rotate ever so slightly. I don't expect Henderson to be rotated, to be honest. And if he does get rotated, it's not going to be very likely he gets subbed on. So then Pope would just feature in my team. But yeah, not bad. Henderson and Pope, that double up. It's been pretty decent since game week 30 wildcard, so pretty happy with that. The reason Agbadou is in the squad in the central defensive position there, he's got Brighton at home. I don't think it's a bad fixture. Do I expect a clean sheet? Not massively. But then when you look at the defence on the bench there, just above my head, you've got Trippier and Kibior, both with really difficult fixtures. You've got Chelsea at home for Trippier, which you could argue is actually not a bad fixture, but Chelsea looked really great against Liverpool, of course, the best side in the Premier League. Cole Palmer looked back to his best. Some sort of switch just flicked in his head, and he's had an unbelievable game. And of course, Chelsea pretty defensively, are good. So I wouldn't say it's an amazing fixture for Trippier. I think I prefer Agbadou ever so slightly, but that could change as we go through the game week. Guardiola with Southampton away from home. The fixture really speaks for itself. It's a great fixture for Guardiola. Of course, really highly owned, but there's no real plan or need to get rid of him going into the end of the season with good fixtures and, of course, a nailed-on position within that City squad. I think overall, in terms of defensive transfers, there's not really anything that's jumping out right now to me. That might change through the week, but I think potentially there's other higher-owned players within the squad I could target instead of getting rid of differential players like O'Brien, Agbadou, Kibior. Maybe they can wait for transfers possibly next game week, but overall the defence looks okay this game week. Not mind-blowing, but Guardiola, decent fixture, and Henderson, I would say, has got a decent chance for his game week to be a clean sheet. We'll see what happens, of course, but let's move up now to the midfielders. This probably doesn't surprise many people, but Bryan Mbeumo is going to be my captain for game week 36. Ipswich away from home. We've all probably seen the stats of Bryan Mbeumo against newly promoted sides. He just absolutely farms them, to be honest. So I think it does make a lot of sense to go ahead and captain him this game week. Could be the case I go differential with the captain again and go Marmoush, who's up front. Spoiler alert. But yeah, he hasn't been too great recently, Marmoush. A little bit disappointing, in fact. So I don't think I would change captaincy straight away. But yeah, Brian Mbeumo seems the obvious pick this game week. We have Bowen, who was potentially going to be my captain for last game week, but I did chicken out and go for Mbeumo. Missed out on some points there, which was another mistake, but we still came away with a pretty decent green arrow in the end. Bowen, of course, has Manchester United away. We spoke about Spurs, rotating for their Europa League final. It looks like Manchester United are going to get in that final as well, so perhaps more rotation within that squad. Who knows what could happen? Bowen has looked really consistent over the last few weeks, and of course missed a pretty decent chance within his last fixture, last game week, to result in more points, so maybe I got a bit lucky there as well. But overall, I think he's a pretty decent pick going into the end of the season now. You've got Palmer still in the squad. I know a lot of people got rid of him. I had him since game week 30 wildcard. He's outscored Saka by a lot of points now, so in theory it was the right decision despite Cole Palmer being pretty poor in recent weeks. Of course, that goal, that penalty against Liverpool was a fantastic rank booster to the end of my game week 35 team. So pretty happy he looks back to form. We'll see if it translates to the Newcastle game. I'm hoping it does because, again, he is pretty differential at the moment, even at his popular price point, you could say. You've got Salah as well with Arsenal at home. Of course, we watched the Champions League last night. Arsenal didn't look too great. I mean, in periods of the game, they did look dangerous, but they did just kind of fall apart, and it wasn't really threatening going forward as you may have expected within that fixture going against PSG, but they just couldn't get it done. And Salah against Arsenal this week, there's no need to transfer him out, in my opinion. I mean, who do I even go for? The money would just be sitting there, unless I go for Haaland this week if we get some news, but it doesn't look like he's going to get a start in his fixture against Southampton. If he does, that could be a massive differential caption option. So the option is open there to potentially sell Salah or Palmer to fund the move to Haaland. But I do doubt I'll do that move unless we get some definitive news that Haaland is available and starting within that Southampton fixture. On the bench, you have Semenyo there with an Aston Villa at home fixture. It actually is a really good fixture, and maybe there's a chance that I bench Mo Salah and play Semenyo this week because, Salah does have a hard fixture against Arsenal, but Salah can really score against absolutely anyone, so maybe the risk isn't worth it there because of how highly owned Salah is. And if I take that risk and Salah does well, and he's on my bench with, let's say, 10, 12 pointer, that is really going to diminish all of the progress I've made in the last 9, 10 game weeks of back-to-back green arrows. So I think it's probably wise that this is how I set up the midfield this game week. Let's push up now to the forwards and have a little bit of a chat about possible transfers I can make for this game week. Now, in terms of the forward line for my team, Evan Nielsen really is the only differential within the squad here. You've got ISAK and Marmoush, who are pretty highly owned. Of course, Marmoush has a fantastic fixture this week with Southampton away from home. I think the only problem and thing that's put me off captaincy is he has just been disappointing in recent weeks. It would be a massive differential to go against sort of Mbeumo, Salah, really popular captains this game week, but is it really worth it? I'm not sure it is. So I think, like I said in the midfield section, Mbeumo sticks with the captain's armband for now. I don't think it needs Marmoush needs a transfer out this game week at all. Of course, look at the fixture. You really don't want to be removing a City player for that game week. ISAK, on the other hand, Chelsea at home, he's been a little bit lackluster in recent weeks. Still putting in decent performances, though, and getting chances. Maybe it's time for ISAK to go. He's very highly owned. He's not really particularly helping my rank at all, really. It's kind of just protection against his ownership. Maybe a transfer out for him this game week would make sense. Who could I go for, though? You've got a few different options. You could go WISSA, who I think is going to be an extremely popular transfer this week. A lot of people who own Mateta still will probably transfer Mateta out and go to WISSA. Of course, the fixture of Ipswich away from home is really great for WISSA, and of course Fulham at home, then Wolves away from home is remaining fixtures, the same as Brian Mbeumo, of course, are pretty decent, so that seems like a pretty good transfer to make. Another transfer you can make is Chris Wood. He's got pretty decent fixtures coming up. Of course, Leicester this game week is fantastic. So potentially getting him in for a strong end to the season. Of course, he'll be massively pushing towards Champions League football. A big desire from Forest to go ahead and get that, despite, again, disappointing performances from the squad in recent weeks. You could then say potentially Cunha. Now, the issue with the Cunha transfer for me is he's pretty much on the way out. We already know he's going to go to Manchester United. Is now the time where Wolves have nothing to play for, where he's going to get benched? He hasn't in recent weeks, which is maybe pushing me towards that transfer ever so slightly. But still, if I had to pick for this game week a transfer for ISAK out and someone in, it would be one of Wood or Johan Wissa. And I think Wissa really stands out as the better pick with better fixtures, perhaps, going into the end of the season. It's just tough to make that call. Of course, getting rid of ISAK could massively backfire, but ISAK's fixtures coming up are Chelsea at home, Arsenal away, then the end of the season it's Everton at home, which is a decent fixture actually. Yeah, it could be a possible transfer. But Evan Nielsen, the last player to talk about, Aston Villa at home. I think it's a good fixture for Bournemouth. I really do think it's a decent fixture. Of course, Evan Nielsen looked brilliant in recent weeks, and he's been one of Bournemouth's best players in my opinion. Same as Semenyo, he's kind of stepped up in recent weeks as well, despite his benching in the previous game week. So, yeah, I mean, across the team there, you've got a few differential players, a differential captain option there in Brian Mbeumo. I tell you what, he's probably not going to be a massive difference. I think a lot of people who have bought a Brian Mbeumo will definitely captain him this week. If you own Wissa, if you own Wood, if you own Marmoush, they're all differential captains, in my opinion, over Mbeumo, Salah, those type of players. You could argue Bowen's a good shout this week again. I think Manchester United are more defensively sound than Spurs. Of course, last week, Bowen scoring against Spurs. Maybe we can see that again in the Manchester United fixture. But like I say, Brian Mbeumo absolutely farms newly promoted side. So I'm expecting a similar type of result for Brentford for this particular fixture. But overall, getting rid of someone like ISAK this week is pretty much a straightforward transfer for me. Depends if I want to take that risk. If the news of Haaland being ready and available to start, and we get some type of news that he's going to start in this Southampton fixture, getting rid of Mo Salah and potentially Alexander Isak to go in Haaland and then somebody else within the midfield who has a good set of fixtures to end the season could be a pretty strong transfer, and another differential captain in Erling Haaland potentially for the game week. Of course, it's just news that I'm waiting for to make that decision, but overall with the squad there, I'm pretty happy for the game week. Hopefully we can get my 10th green arrow in a row and keep pushing to the top 100k in the world. I always like to outro my videos with a massive thank you to you guys for supporting the FPL Mogs YouTube channel. Of course, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you drop a like. And if you aren't yet subscribed to the FPL Mogs channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button for future FPL videos and, of course, deadline streams. But that's absolutely everything for today's video. Thank you again so much for watching today's video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.